Michelle, thanks for coming. We're so excited to learn more about Stina and May. Tell us, what is the product? How many SKUs do you have? Where did it come from? What separates you from the crowd? Tell us more. Tell us more.
I'm very happy to be here. Thank you so much. Stina and May is a motherhood accessories company. And what we started out with initially was making transitional handbags for moms. And these are two examples here of those bags. And then as we grew, our product line grew to answer the call of our customer. And so now we have about 32 SKUs.
Wow. Interesting. So what's the range? And first of all, tell us what a transitional bag is.
A transitional handbag is a bag that can go from the diapering stage all the way throughout
Interesting.
every aspect of motherhood. So it transitions with you. It's styled like a handbag, so it's something that you can carry and continue to carry.
Right.
But it has the functionality and organizational components that you need when you're going through the diapering stage.
Right. So you said you have 30 plus SKUs now. What are the latest additions to the product line?
The latest additions to the product line are these here, our bibs and our onesies, as well as our faux leather antimicrobial changing mat.
Nice. Wonderful. And when did Stina and May start? When did you get started?
Officially, Stina and May started in 2015, but once I had my son, I had to take a little bit of time off during my pregnancy and then after, just to kind of get into
Right.
the enormity that is becoming a mother.
Interesting. And so when did you launch, perhaps? Maybe I can ask that question. When did you launch your first product to the market?
In 2016.
2016. Yes. So the question, of course, that's on my mind is 2016, you launched Stina and May, you have your products out there. When is the first time that you're thinking, wow, I really need to put some thought into operations?
So actually, it was something that was really in the forethought of my mind and forefront of my mind because I had started another startup prior to this.
Interesting.
And it was very successful very early on. The issue with it is that I didn't have the operational framework in place to really be able to optimize on that growth. And so because of that, unfortunately, didn't really survive.
Right.
The growth spur that happened so quickly. And so going into Stina and May, one of the things I wanted to make sure was that I really had that framework in place.
Right. And so framework as well as perhaps mindset. If you think about what you were looking to develop in yourself and perhaps recruit in others, if you're looking for someone with an operations mindset to avoid the pitfalls of the first startup, what are some of the traits or personality attributes or skills even that you think someone who wants to develop an operations mindset should possess?
I think attention to detail and organization.
Yes.
There's a lot of details when it comes to apparel manufacturing. And so someone that if we were to bring someone on to take that, currently I take that role.
Right.
But if we were to bring someone on, they would have to have a great attention to detail, great organizational skills, and follow through.
Wonderful. So do you think you're naturally an operations-minded person, a left-brain person?
No.
Okay. So how are you just kind of pushing through and how are you complementing or supplementing the fact that you're not naturally kind of left-brained or operations-minded?
Well, I know what happens when you're not.
I see. You've learned the hard way. Okay.
And so I've learned from my mistakes. And so when doing things, I really have learned to think things through at a granular level. I can sometimes be a big picture person. And so because of that, I have had to retrain my brain to think about the process from beginning to end.
Right. I love it. I love it. Angela, it is wonderful to have Artefactors with us today. Thanks for coming.
Hi, Jen. Thank you for having me. This is a really honor.
I think people are really curious to learn what Artefactors is and how you came to kind of start this product line.
Well, Artefactors is a eco-exotic statement jewelry business that features hand-woven designs by vulnerable women from Colombia. And all our products are made out of 100% recycled, all natural materials.
Interesting.
Like orange peel and coffee beans and cantaloupe seeds and all of that.
Interesting.
Yeah, and the reason why I decided to start it, it was actually, it just came out of experience, I would say. I'm an engineer by trade, and every time that I traveled to Colombia to visit my parents, I would buy a piece of jewelry for me. And once I was here, I always got stopped by women asking me, like, where did you get it? And
Right.
that happened for years. And when I got my MBA from Babson, I learned that you could be in a competitive industry if you can differentiate yourself.
Interesting.
And I was very hesitant because jewelry is very competitive, and I wasn't sure if I really wanted to jump into it. But I decided to give it a try,
Okay.
and that's how it all started.
Wonderful. And so when was that? When did you start Artefactos?
I started testing the market in 2014.
2014.
The first semester of 2014.
Wonderful. So at that point, you were probably were you making everything by hand yourself in 2014?
I went to visit the artisans. I had conversations with them because another reason why I decided to start this is because while I was talking to them, I could learn how tough their lives are and how much I could really help them.
Right.
And I wanted to give the company that social impact focus, and obviously environmental because we recycled. So that was really my inspiration. So in 2014, I just brought a bunch of different styles from them because we work with them. And I just wanted to test the market here and see if they will be interested.
So that's interesting. It sounds as if, in addition to kind of the beautiful handiwork, some of your value proposition is around environmental impact and social impact. Do you have targets and metrics in your mind about how you can measure the social impact and the environmental impact of your products? Are there metrics that you were able to share with even your customers?
Right, yeah. So the metric that I can have regarding social impact right now is that the 7 artisans that have been working with us for this time, they have increased their income by 3 times. So,
interesting. Okay.
So that is one of the metrics. One of them, actually, our lead artisan was able to buy her first home in January of this year. So that is a huge
interesting
goal and achievement.
Yes.
And that really makes me get more inspired to continue. In terms of environmental impact, I think it's very minimum. We use the orange peel we recycled from restaurants and street juice vendors.
Interesting.
There are 15 million tons of orange peel and unused seeds that go to landfills every year.
Right.
So we are doing just a very small portion of that.
Interesting.
But we are doing something.
So that's interesting. So one way to think about environmental impact is what's the impact on the waste as a total kind of available waste versus the percentage that you're able to use in your production line.
Right.
And then I guess another way perhaps to think about it is, are you able to say what percentage of the product materials are all natural and recycled? Do you think about it that way and do you market it that way?
I do. It's 100% recycled. It's
I
100%. So I call the jewelry organic because every part of every necklace is natural.
Interesting. Does this include the
so
strings as well?
Oh well, the string is it's natural fiber, but like for instance, I'm gonna give you an example for this piece that has different seeds. These first ones are acai berries.
Okay.
The turquoise ones are camajuro seeds. The brown ones are coffee beans.
Interesting.
And this is raw amber. So the whole piece is, I call it organic, so it's all natural.
Wow, that's fascinating.
Yes.
So you started in 2014. I have to ask a question. When was the first time you actually intentionally thought about the operations behind your process?
I would say I'm an operational person in a way.
Wonderful.
From the beginning, because as well, like in engineering, I work mostly on the operations part of the business.
Right.
But I would say in the second semester of 2014, so I knew from the beginning that I had to have processes cleared and organized. I knew that if I was gonna just be things, let things be.
Right.
It was going to be more complicated later on to fix them.
That's right.
So I knew I had to be very organized from the beginning, from the operational point of view.
Interesting.
So very early in the life of Artefactos, I was very aware of the operations part of it.
Interesting. So from day one, you decided you wanted to have an operational focus,
Right.
and you started to implement those because you realized that in order to grow and scale, you needed that foundation. Ivy, how are you?
I am good. How are you?
We're wonderful.
Good,
We are looking to hear about IVs, not to be confused with Ivy.
Yeah.
Tell us more about the product line and what you're offering. And what I'm really interested to hear is what's unique about your product.
Okay, sure. So the product line is derived from honey. So we make everything with raw honey. We started a business as just selling the raw honey to specialty food stores, and then I started deriving, personal care products with the raw honey as one of the main ingredients.
So can you tell us about what we're looking at here? When you say personal care products, what does that include?
Sure. So we don't have the shampoo here and conditioners, but we make a line of shampoo and conditioners. We make a line of face care, and we just launched a toothpaste. It's a natural toothpaste, and yes, it's kind of intuitive to use honey in a toothpaste, but it's also a wonderful ingredient in a toothpaste. Yeah.
Right. So what's so magical about honey exactly?
So people don't understand how powerful that ingredient is. Honey is got antibacterial properties. It's antioxidant. It's got nutrients that you can't really find anywhere else. And unfortunately, it's kind of a misunderstood thing to eat. It comes from bees,
Right.
and they make too much of it, so they just pollinate.
Interesting.
And every third bite or third or fourth bite that we take of natural food is touched by a bee, so that's why they're necessary, and that's what make honey so special.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So when did IVs start?
Ivy started 8 years ago,
Interesting.
actually 10 years ago.
Wow.
So I left at the height of my career, corporate America, and I'm an engineer by degree. And I just decided that I wanted to do a business of my own. And when it started, it's funny because people thought I would do something more technical, but I had a family situation where we have diabetes in our family, and I was looking for a sweetener that I could use as I get older, so I wouldn't get full-blown diabetes. And I don't have diabetes, thank God. And so every time I do research, whether it's in a library or online, honey would, raw honey would be the sweetener that I, that comes up.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I started studying raw honey, and then, finding out all these amazing things about raw honey and how it can really, be used in just about anything.
Interesting.
Yeah.
So somewhere around 2008, Ivy's was born.
Yes.
And you said that you had a technical background. So I'm curious, given that you had a technical background, did you start thinking about the operations for Ivy very much at the beginning, or was that something that came much later?
No, it kind of went into fruition much later, but I was thinking about it. And let me tell you, supply chain is, whoa. We had our first major supply of 30,000 toothpaste came because we have different co-packers all over the world. And that was such an experience. So my KPI, the matrices, that was, well intact, but we still had some issues, some problem with the arrival of the shipment. I've learned the term demurrage charge,
Right.
which mean that, cannot stay on the, on the dock for more than a certain, for more than certain hours, really, maybe a day, 24 hours, and then you have to move it, or otherwise you're paying lots and lots of money. So supply chain is, so important to the business, yeah.
So if you had to hire someone and you were looking for someone with an operations mindset, what are some of the attributes and the kind of skills and values and personality traits, perhaps even, that you might look for in that person?
Sure. First of all, you have to understand a supply chain. That's one of the things that's paramount. When I have an operations manager right now, and you have to understand how things come together, how our customers are impacted. We sell about 60% of our products are sold wholesale, so we sell to large companies, and it's like a just-in-time type of operation. So they want it not too late, not too soon.
Right.
So you have to kind of, get in line with their operation,
Right.
their logistics.
Right.
And so that's what I look for, somebody who understand that and understand how to move products in a way that it's not going to be too early or too late,
Right.
and that everything is going to work, smoothly. It's tough to do that. Yeah.
Right. And so, are those skills that you possess, or did you actively go out to find somebody who had those skills?
I took a supply chain class
Okay.
in grad school, and I had a tough time. I
Right.
have to confess.
That's right.
So I remember my professor saying, "Well, you could just always hire somebody who like it." And so no, I understand the terminologies, but no, it's not my expertise. So I'm glad to pass it off to someone else.
Fair enough.
Yeah.
Fair enough. I love it. Prabha and Derek, thanks so much for coming to share with us about Momentum. Can you tell us a little bit about what Momentum is exactly?
Yeah, so Momentum is basically a pay-it-forward nonprofit crowdfunding platform that allows anyone in the world to donate to women entrepreneurs in developing countries. So these women entrepreneurs are basically oftentimes living in an underdeveloped country and oftentimes need funding to start very small-scale businesses in their communities. And so we raise typically between 200 to 400 US dollars. And what makes us a little bit different than what you typically see in the microfinancing space is our pay it forward model. And that basically means that all funds raised on our platforms are a donation. And when the women entrepreneurs become profitable, they then pay it forward to support other entrepreneurs in their communities. And so we're really trying to build these communities of women supporting women around the world.
Wow, so this sounds a little bit complicated. So you're trying to find donors, you're having them go through your platform to then donate to entrepreneurs across the world. And then you have this pay it forward model in which entrepreneurs themselves leverage some of the funds that they have generated to fund other entrepreneurs. So this doesn't sound easy at all. So when is the first time that you start to think, wow, we need to really put some operations in place to make this happen?
Yeah, that's a great question. We started Momentum second semester of our sophomore year, and then junior year, first semester at Babson, I took your class,
Okay.
Ops for Entrepreneurs, and I think it was really at that moment when I came back to Prabha after one of her courses, I was like, oh my gosh, like we haven't thought about all this time, like our lead times for getting the money to the entrepreneurs, how do we, chart out our processes, like these are things that were kind of at the back of our mind, but it wasn't something that we thought very consciously about. And taking a class like that really allowed us to think more visibly and more clearly about these problems that we have from the ops side.
Right. So when you say processes for a nonprofit, perhaps it's not obvious what operations processes even exist in a nonprofit. So tell me what you broadly mean by processes in a nonprofit context, and also you're an online platform. So what does that mean for processes exactly?
Yeah, so I think there's definitely two parts to it. One is, the product itself, so, how we built it, how we maintain it,
Right.
things like that. But then there's also, donor acquisition ops. How do we bring donors to our platform?
Right.
How do we engage with them? Things
Right.
like that. Partners are really big for us because the way that we find our women entrepreneurs are by actually partnering with these organizations on the ground.
Right.
So partnership ops is also a part, how do we bring these partners in? How do we verify them?
Right.
And maintain connections with them. And then entrepreneur ops is the last bit. How do we raise funds for them and then ultimately deploy that capital?
Interesting. So who wants to do this, right? So Derek, obviously you weren't inclined. You're like, wow, I was in the class, and you realize. But who has the natural kind of inclination to want to think about processes and data and analysis and planning? Which of you two, as the co-founders, is inclined that way? Who is the left
Definitely
brain
her.
of the team?
I have to say I do really like my data and spreadsheets. So
Nice.
I do think that being really analytically based and detail oriented is so critical to operations. Especially for us, like there aren't a lot of softwares out there that are specifically tailored to being nonprofit operations.
Right.
So we have to keep track of our lead times on our own, transfer times, how long it takes to fund an entrepreneur, especially because we built our platform from scratch as well.
Wow. Right.
There was a lot of stuff that we had to start going back in and making sure was kind of built in to make it easy to do operations. So,
Right. Interesting.
yeah.
So that's your kind of, you're the ops guru.
But it's funny, Derek has taken more of the operations classes.
Interesting.
So.
I
it's a team
have to-
effort.
It's a team
yeah,
effort.
I have to train myself
Yes.
to think that way.
Right.
It's not something that comes natural to me like it does for Prabha. You should see her to-do list. And
Right.
how organized she
I love
is.
it. I love it.
I'm more all over the place, so I really have to adopt that mindset and put on that hat in order to think like an ops person.
Yeah, that's really helpful. Thanks so much. So Matthew and Michael, thanks so much for joining us. We're really interested to hear, what is Lula? Can you tell us what it is?
Yeah, Lula is an app that lets college students rent cars from one another.
Interesting. So where did this idea come from?
So it's funny because it was late Friday night, and really the only thing that delivers here in Babson late at night is Domino's.
Okay.
And we had Domino's for a couple weeks in a row, and we were kind of bored of it, and we wanted something different.
Right.
So we decided to order Papa John's, but we found out they don't deliver, so we tried bribing them, and they still wouldn't deliver it to us.
Yes.
So we decided to check out the Uber estimate, and when we saw it, we realized it made no sense to take a $30 Uber to pick up an $8 pizza.
That sounds
So
reasonable.
yeah, so when the pizza arrived, because we ended up ordering Domino's again, we walked outside to pick up the food, and Michael looks at the parking lot, and all of a sudden he looks at me and he's like, man, it'd be really cool if we could rent one of those
Interesting.
cars out to go pick up the food.
Interesting.
So when we went back inside the dorm hall, we mentioned the idea to our friends, and they were all like kind of excited about it, and we realized we weren't the only ones that had this problem. So we ended up applying for the Babson Beta Challenge. We made it into the semifinals, and we got such positive feedback that we decided to pursue the idea.
Wonderful. So whenabouts was that?
This was March of 2016.
2016.
So it was about 2 years ago. And then that was just like the idea phase. And then we really started to work on it during that summer. Then we started, little by little, it just started to like kind of steamroll. We started working on it more and more and more.
Right.
And then about a year ago, so last summer, summer of 2017, we were like, let's work on it full time.
Right.
And so
Interesting.
that's really when we began focusing on it full time.
Okay, so full force last summer.
Yeah.
So this is an app. So as a student, I download the app, and then I get to see, talk me through what the process looks like.
Yeah, so typical use case is I'm a student in need of a car.
Right.
I go on the application, I put so I can choose June 25th.
Right.
So I select the date and I select the time.
Right.
And then at that point, I'm able to see which cars are available in the area to
Interesting.
rent. And so let's
Interesting.
say I'm renting your car.
Right.
I put those times, I put those dates, and then I just press rent. And at that point, you're going to get a notification saying, hey, Michael wants to rent your car
Wonderful.
on this date from this time to this time. And you get to actually see my profile,
Right.
see if you feel comfortable with me renting your car.
Right.
And you can simply press approve or decline.
Interesting.
And then if you do press approve, perfect. You get a notification. You get a message saying, text Michael, blah, 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 at his phone number. And then
Right.
I get one, the same saying, text at this phone number
Wow.
and coordinate kind of the key swap. And so it's
Interesting.
pretty simple.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Interesting. So what is Lula? Tell me your heritage. Are you guys, what does
So-
Lula mean?
So Lula, so we're Puerto Rican and Cuban. My mom was born in Puerto Rico, my dad in Cuba.
Okay.
But Lula, so when we were deciding the name, we wanted something that was about 4 letters, something with 2 syllables and easy to pronounce, like Uber and Nike.
Right.
So we started looking at words that were synonymous with Lula, but in different languages. So like easy, affordable, convenient. And after about a 2-week search, we found a couple of words, and one of them was Lula. And so at that point, I was living with a kid from Taiwan, a kid from Sweden,
Interesting.
Canada, and a kid from India. And I asked him to pronounce all the different words to see which was the easiest, and they all said Lula. And then my family back home, a lot of them don't speak English, so I did the same with them, and everybody said Lula. So it means convenient
Right.
in the African language of Zulu.
Interesting.
But the first name that we had ever thought of was ahora, which means now in Spanish.
Right. I can see why you
Yeah.
think of that name. So would you say the value proposition then for Lula is convenience?
Yeah.
Is that the
Convenience.
mission?
Yeah, so for us, what we wanted was we wanted to offer consumers, particularly college students,
Right.
transportation options that were affordable and convenient.
Interesting. Okay.
And the mentality was the thought process was, okay, Uber and Lyft, they're extremely convenient,
Right.
but they're not necessarily affordable.
Interesting.
And so owning a car is extremely convenient again, but it's
Right.
not necessarily affordable.
Interesting.
And so now we live in a time where access trumps ownership.
Right.
So no longer do millennials and Generation Z really care for ownership of the asset as
Right.
much as they do can I access it almost on demand.
Right.
And so kind of the genesis for the company was let's create an application that gives college students access to the car momentarily. And then for
Wonderful.
those students that do have a car, that car is not being used most of the time.
Right.
So let's give them an opportunity to make money and focus on studies, school,
Right.
work, whatever it is. And so that was kind of the value prop. That is the value prop though.
Yeah,
that
and
it
one of the
offers.
big things that we really pride ourselves is that we're free to join. So a lot of these different car sharing apps, you typically have to pay a membership fee, and
Right.
that typically goes towards, for instance, the background checks. Whereas with us, we take the hit because we understand that with this particular demographic, there's a lot of financial sensitivity, and we
Right.
really want to be able to accommodate to that as much as possible. So we really pride ourselves on being free to join for both the drivers and the owners, and then we really encourage our owners to keep their prices reasonable. So we have cars that start at $5 an hour,
Right.
and then obviously you'll see cars that are a little higher. I mean, we have one Porsche that's $20 an hour,
Interesting.
but still that's a luxury car and it's
Right.
relatively cheap
Right.
for what you're getting.
Right.
And then, like I said, we have some cars that hover around $5 an hour, and that's something that we
Interesting.
really pride ourselves on.
Interesting.
The
Interesting.
affordability.
And that includes insurance as well.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
That is a deal. So when I think about apps, I have to say operations is not necessarily the first thing that comes
Yeah.
to mind. I'm curious, are you guys thinking about operations? And if so, when did that happen and why? What brought you to think about operations?
Yeah, so we never thought about operations until recently.
Okay.
And what happened was we ended up in February, once we ended up launching and stuff like that, launched our pilot, we started I guess operating.
Right.
But it was very startup like.
Yes.
It was very much like just a startup ran by two students. Operations weren't necessarily a key
focus.
the focus.
Yeah.
Right.
And so towards the end of the semester, we started to get a legitimate interest from investors and from professional investors and
Right.
investors that had taken companies public and investors that sit on the board of public companies and all that. And so they would kind of ask us these questions and we weren't prepared for them at all. And I remember, since I'm the one that usually deals with the investors, I remember one day I got off a phone call with one of them. And we really wanted him to join the team. And I called Matthew and I said, Matthew, we need to get our stuff together.
Right.
Because this guy is drilling me and we've never given thought to a lot of the questions he was asking me.
And so what were some of those operational questions that the investors are asking?
Yeah, things like number one, who's our development team? How are we sourcing that? How are we working with them? How do we communicate with them?
Right.
In terms of like legal team employees, how is it that do we have schedules for them? How do we communicate with them?
Right.
How do we keep track of
Do
everything?
we have a schedule for the launch? Not just necessarily
right.
what week are we going to launch on a new campus, what date, what time are we going
Right.
to do
So-
this, how many people are we going to average on each campus, how are we going to get each one of those individuals
Right.
for the background checks, what company are you using, how is it that from
That's
the
right.
moment somebody signs up to the moment they get approved, how does all that happen?
So this idea of kind of putting in place processes and metrics and schedules, everything that's operations, now that you're kind of looking to traditional and professional investors and the investment community, they're demanding that you have these operations in place.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as a matter of fact, we have to send them updates bi-weekly.
Wow.
So every 2 Fridays, basically
Interesting.
we send them an update and we'll jump on a phone call with them.